Anarchism. Anarchism is a political philosophy rooted in the belief that hierarchical systems of power, such as governments and states, are inherently oppressive and should be abolished. At its core, anarchism promotes individual freedom, voluntary cooperation, and the absence of coercive authority. In an anarchist society, individuals are free to govern themselves, making decisions and organizing their lives based on mutual cooperation, consensus, and respect for others. Rather than relying on a centralized government, power is decentralized and diffused among individuals and communities. This fosters a society based on equality, justice, and shared responsibility. Anarchism rejects the notion of private property as it often leads to inequality and exploitation. Instead, it advocates for the collective ownership and control of resources, ensuring that everyone has equal access to the essentials of life. Anarchism emphasizes direct action and grassroots movements as means of achieving social change. It encourages individuals to engage in acts of resistance, such as strikes, protests, and civil disobedience, to challenge oppressive systems and promote liberation. Democracy. Democracy is a political system that places power in the hands of the people, allowing citizens to participate in decision-making processes and shape the policies and laws that govern them. It is founded on the principles of popular sovereignty and the protection of individual rights and freedoms. In a democratic society, citizens exercise their political rights through free and fair elections, where they choose representatives to act on their behalf. These representatives are accountable to the people and are expected to uphold the interests and values of their constituents. Key components of democracy include freedom of speech, freedom of the press, and the right to assemble and petition the government. Democracy also emphasizes the importance of minority rights and the protection of marginalized groups. It seeks to prevent the tyranny of the majority and ensures that the rights of all individuals, regardless of their race, religion, gender, or socioeconomic status, are respected and protected. Fascism. Fascism is a political ideology that emerged in the early 20th century, characterized by authoritarianism, extreme nationalism, and the suppression of individual liberties. It places a strong emphasis on centralized power, strict social hierarchies, and the subordination of the individual to the state. At the core of fascism is the belief in the superiority of one's own nation or race. Fascist regimes often promote xenophobia, racism, and the exclusion of minority groups, seeking to create a homogeneous and pure society. Fascist governments are characterized by a dictatorial leadership, where a charismatic leader holds absolute power and controls all aspects of society. This includes the suppression of political opposition, censorship of dissenting voices. Fascist regimes often pursue aggressive foreign policies, seeking to expand their influence and pursue territorial ambitions. The historical examples of fascist regimes, such as Nazi Germany and Fascist Italy, have left a legacy of devastation, human rights abuses, and genocide. Chiefdom. A chiefdom is a political system that has existed in many traditional societies, characterized by a hierarchical structure centered around a chief or paramount leader. Chiefdoms were prevalent in various regions around the world, including parts of Africa, the Pacific Islands, and Native American societies. In a chiefdom, the chief holds a position of authority and exercises power over a defined territory and its inhabitants. The chief's authority is typically hereditary, passed down through kinship lines, and their position is often associated with religious or symbolic significance. The chief serves as both a political and a spiritual leader, responsible for maintaining social order, resolving disputes, and representing the community in external affairs. Chiefdoms are organized into social classes or strata, with the chief and their immediate family occupying the highest status. Below them, there may be nobles, warriors, and commoners, each with their respective roles and responsibilities. Wealth and resources are often unequally distributed, with the chief and elites enjoying privileged positions, while commoners contribute labor or tribute to sustain the chiefdom. Communism. Communism is a political and socio-economic ideology that advocates for the establishment of a classless, stateless society in which the means of production are collectively owned and controlled by the community as a whole. It is rooted in the belief that capitalism perpetuates inequality, exploitation, and alienation. In a communist system, private property is abolished, and the means of production, such as factories and land, are owned and managed by the working class. The goal is to eliminate the divisions between the bourgeoisie, the capitalist class, and the proletariat, the the working class. In practice, communism has been associated with the establishment of socialist states, where a vanguard party leads the transition towards communism. These states often have planned economies with central planning and state control over key industries. The ultimate aim, however, is the withering away of the state and the establishment of a true communist society. Historical examples of communist regimes, such as the Soviet Union and Maoist China, have faced challenges in implementing their ideals and have been associated with human rights abuses, economic stagnation, and political repression. Monarchy. Monarchy is a political system in which a single individual, usually referred to as a monarch or king-queen, holds supreme authority and power over a nation or territory. The monarch's position is typically hereditary, passed down through a royal lineage, although some monarchies may have elective elements. The powers and responsibilities of the monarch can vary widely depending on the specific constitutional arrangements of the monarchy. Monarchies can be classified into two main types: constitutional monarchies and absolute monarchies. In constitutional monarchies, the monarch's powers are limited by a constitution or laws, and the government is run by elected officials. The monarch's role is primarily symbolic, representing the nation and performing ceremonial duties. Countries like the United Kingdom, Japan, and Spain follow this form of monarchy. On the other hand, absolute monarchies grant the monarch unrestricted power, allowing them to make decisions and govern the nation without significant checks and balances. Socialism. Socialism is a political and economic system that advocates for the collective ownership and control of the means of production, distribution, and exchange. It is grounded in the belief that wealth and resources should be shared equitably among all members of society, rather than being concentrated in the hands of a few individuals or private entities. Key industries and resources are owned and managed by the state or by the workers themselves, with the goal of eliminating exploitation and promoting social welfare. Socialism seeks to address the inherent inequalities and injustices of capitalism by providing access to essential services and ensuring a basic standard of living for all members of society. It often advocates for robust social safety nets, universal health care, education, and affordable housing. Historical examples of socialist regimes, such as the Soviet Union, have faced challenges in terms of economic growth, political freedoms, and human rights. Libertarianism. Libertarianism is a political philosophy that places a strong emphasis on individual liberty, limited government intervention, and free market principles. At its core, libertarianism advocates for maximizing personal freedom and minimizing the role of the state in both economic and social affairs. Individual rights and freedoms are considered paramount. Libertarians believe that individuals have the right to live their lives as they choose, free from coercive interference, as long as they do not infringe upon the rights of others. This includes the right to own property, engage in voluntary transactions, and pursue personal goals without undue government intervention. Critics of libertarianism argue that its focus on limited government may neglect social and economic inequalities, environmental concerns, and the need for collective action to address societal challenges. They contend that unregulated markets can lead to exploitation, inequality, and market failures. Feudalism. Feudalism was a political, economic, and social system that flourished in medieval Europe from the 9th to the 15th century. It was characterized by a hierarchical structure based on the exchange of land and military service, with the monarch at the top and a network of vassals and serfs below. Feudalism operated on the principle of land ownership and control. The king, or monarch, owned all the land in the kingdom and granted portions of it to nobles and lords known as vassals, in exchange for their loyalty, military service, and counsel. These vassals, in turn, granted smaller portions of land, called fiefs. While feudalism provided a sense of stability and security during a time of political turmoil, it also had limitations. The system lacked a centralized authority and often led to conflicts and disputes between lords. Additionally, the rigid structure and limited social mobility for serfs contributed to social inequality and hindered economic development. Liberalism. Liberalism is a political ideology and system that places a strong emphasis on individual rights, liberty, equality, and limited government intervention. It emerged in the 18th century as a response to absolute monarchies and has since evolved into various branches and interpretations. At its core, liberalism upholds the belief in the inherent worth and dignity of each individual. It advocates for the protection of individual rights and freedoms, such as freedom of speech, religion, and assembly. In terms of economic policy, liberalism generally supports a market-based economy with private property rights and open competition. It emphasizes the role of free markets in promoting economic growth, innovation, and individual prosperity. However, liberalism also recognizes the need for government regulation to prevent abuses, ensure fair competition, protect consumers, and provide a safety net for those in need. Critics of liberalism argue that its emphasis on individualism and limited government may undermine social cohesion, collective responsibility, and the provision of public goods. They contend that unregulated markets can lead to inequality, exploitation, and environmental degradation. Syndicalism is a revolutionary current within the labor movement that aims to overthrow capitalism and establish worker control of the economy. Here's a breakdown of its key features. Syndicalism emphasizes the power of organized labor through unions. It promotes forming unions based on industry, industrial unionism, rather than specific trades, creating a more unified worker front. Syndicalism advocates for direct action to achieve its goals. This includes strikes, boycotts, and worker occupations of factories. The ultimate goal of syndicalism is to establish a system where workers collectively own and manage the means of production. Syndicalism gained popularity in Europe during the early 20th century, particularly in France and Italy. Separatism refers to the advocacy for the cultural, ethnic, tribal, religious, racial, governmental, or gender-based separation of a group from a larger entity. It's the belief that a group would be better off establishing its own independent identity and governing structure. There are various reasons why groups might pursue separatism. Historical grievances, cultural differences, economic marginalization, or a desire for self-determination can all be driving forces. Separatism has played a role in many historical events. The American Revolution is a classic example. More recent examples include the breakup of the Soviet Union and the ongoing conflict between Kurds and the Turkish government. Authoritarianism describes a form of government where power is concentrated in the hands of a single leader or a small elite group. Authoritarian regimes often hold elections, but they are frequently rigged or lack genuine opposition. The focus isn't on the will of the people, but on maintaining the status quo for those in power. Civil liberties like freedom of speech, assembly, and the press are often curtailed or closely monitored. This allows the regime to control the flow of information and suppress dissent. Authoritarian governments rely on force and intimidation to maintain control. This can involve a strong military or police presence, crackdowns on protests, and persecution of opposition figures. Transhumanism is a philosophical and intellectual movement that advocates for the use of technology to enhance human capabilities and overcome our biological limitations. Transhumanists believe advancements in fields like genetics, artificial intelligence, and nanotechnology can be harnessed to improve human lifespan, health, cognition, and even our physical and sensory abilities. Transhumanism raises a host of ethical concerns. Issues like equitable access to these enhancements, potential social inequalities, and the unforeseen consequences of altering human nature are all part of the ongoing conversation. Transhumanism challenges us to think about the future of humanity and the potential ways technology can shape our evolution. Environmentalism is a broad philosophy and movement that emphasizes the importance of protecting the natural world. Environmentalists advocate for practices that ensure the health of the planet for present and future generations. This includes conserving resources, reducing pollution, and promoting renewable energy sources. The movement recognizes the significant impact human activities have on the environment. It aims to promote responsible resource use, minimize pollution, and mitigate the effects of climate change. Environmentalism encompasses a wide range of approaches. Some focus on activism and raising awareness, while others work on developing sustainable technologies and promoting responsible business practices.